Hello, my name is Hector Zarate. I'm an iOS developer at Spotify. I work as a future developer. This means that I work very close to the user, and I'm concerned with design, accessibility, and usability of the application. Before we really dig into the presentation, I just want to share some numbers of the company. So first, some numbers on Spotify. We are the leading music streaming service all around the world. We have around 75 million active users, 20 million subscribers. We have a catalog of at least 30 million songs, probably a little bit more. And we are available in 58 markets, but this doesn't include Russia. But I'm just wondering how many of you use it through a VPN? Yeah, awesome. And if you don't use it through a VPN, well, you can use it, and it's a really good product. So now some numbers on our iOS client. So you have an idea of what we deal with every day. We have 40 monthly contributors across 2 different time zones, New York and Stockholm, and across 3 offices, Stockholm, Gothenburg, and New York. Our code base is roughly 500,000 lines of code, and well, we support millions of users every day. And now that you know that, yeah, let's just dig into the presentation. So this presentation is about how we transitioned from an application that was visually inconsistent, thick, and client-based. And this is how it looked. I'm just going to move over here. So it's OK, but, well, it could be much better. And this is a story about how we transitioned to here, which is a client that is consistent, light, and backend driven. So I'm going to tell you how that happened, and I'm going to tell you, oh, sorry, so consistent thin and dumb. So I'm going to tell you how that happened, and I'm going to tell you how this will enable the development of next iterations of our product, how it will enable it. Some iterations that we actually don't know what they will be about. And this is a story that perhaps is common to many companies, but I think in our case it's very, very exciting because of our particular organization. So we have to deal with scale. We have to deal with 80 million users. It's a really, really big scale. A really, really big scale also of engineers working to make this product. We also have to deal with lots of innovation. So we are the leading product in the market, but to keep that, we really need to innovate every day. And then I think this is what makes us more unique, or this case more unique, is that our organization is very modular, like really, really modular. You won't believe it. We have all these features like radio or artist or the player, and they are all teams that are autonomous teams with their backend engineers, iOS, Android, QA, test, whatever. For iOS, they're like completely autonomous. They can do anything by themselves. And for iOS, this means that each one of these squares here is it's a project inside an Xcode workspace with a public API, and it's defined by protocols. And this is really cool, because if you work in Album, for example, you can really focus into it, tinker your album future, and you really don't care what's happening here in ads because of this modularity. So it's highly modular, load-dependent, and that's a good thing, and we can all agree on that. The downside of this is that we are creating silos of knowledge between the engineers, and also silos of implementation, consequently. And actually, through time, these silos start to grow more and more apart from each other. And we get to a state where standardization is a very big challenge. It's very, very challenging to do that. So it was natural that our application start to silo it visually. And you can see it here in this comparison. It's the same application, Spotify. And you can see how the fonts might be different, colors, metrics. They're different between screens because well, they were actually developed and maintained in certain isolation. So we got a visually inconsistent product here. And going back to this slide, well, you see these filters, and what we are probably missing is some kind of glue that binds them together. So that's what we develop. This glue that we call global language for a unified experience. And this is a really, really cool story. So glue is a set of metrics, colors, and fonts that are combined together to create components like buttons or titles, headers, whatever, or even things that are even more complex, like this card here that represents a playlist. On the implementation side, it's just a framework that sits in top of UIKit and that all our filters have access to it and use it. So instead of using UIKit directly, we use all these subclasses and factories. And then we can do very swift changes, like very, very quickly, like changing the color of I don't know, some highlight or the font or whatever across all these filters. And this gives, well, this is how it looks after Glue was developed. And this gives our developers this UI building blocks to develop the features that you need. And so we got to, when Glue was finished, this is how it looked. I think it's pretty cool. And we got the first part of consistent theme, thin and dumb. So now it's consistent. But it's still not thin, and it's still not dumb, because still lots of things happen in the client side, translations, lots of things. And also each filter is rendering data in their own framework or in their own way. It's consistent, but it's not thin and dumb. But now I'm going to tell you how we got it thinner. The thin part starts when, this is one of my first projects at Spotify. We were handling the browse page in genres, and my team had this idea of make like really awesome genre pages. And they wanted to showcase not only playlists like we usually will do, but they wanted to showcase artists and singles and playlist albums, everything. They wanted to be very specific for each genre. They wanted to be different at different points in time. And it was just really dynamic. So sometimes you will see a playlist like here in a grid. But sometimes maybe some content will be a table like this one. Or maybe a carousel that you can scroll horizontally, or maybe something else. The point here is that it's very dynamic, and the content is just different types, not just one kind of a very specific model. And this team came with a very, very elegant model of describing this. So they figured this out. They have a space that contains blocks that in turn contain items. And well, they have some basic properties, like an item has a title, subtitle, a block has a title as well, and the space also has a title. And there is one key property here that is the render type for the block. Check that out. And this is how it works. So we have a screen, a screen or page in our iOS client, and we have a space that we are rendering in a vertical collection view. And then we have blocks here that are a collection view inside each cell of this vertical collection view. And then we have items. Yeah? So this is how it was implemented. It works. I was happy about it. It was my first project at Spotify. But then I noticed something really cool, that other pages, not only the genre pages, could be rendered in the same model of information. This is a new releases page. This was a totally different view controller with very different logic, but it can still be described with the same information model. So we have a space, and we have blocks with different render types, and we have items inside there. And this was true even for pages that at first sight might look complex, but we still have a space with blocks and, well, different items inside of them. And if you look even closer, like to the level of items, the information model is still truth, because you still have a title for each block render. You have a title for each item, even when they look like a navigation link. Well, they still have a title. Even when they look like a genre card here, they still have a title. Or they have an image. Here in this case, well, it's just more like an icon rather than an image, but can still be described as an image. And here is the same, it's just a different layout and a little bit bigger. Well, so I abstracted this view controller to make my work easier and thin the rendering of data. And I thought, like, well, if it's useful for me, maybe it's something useful for somebody else. So, well, I abstracted it so that everybody could use it. And I gave it a cool name, which is ceramic, because how you compose things like in these blocks and squares. And the implementation, I think, is pretty simple. If you want to use this framework, I defined these 3 protocols that you conform to. You have a space protocol, block protocol, and item protocol. And I really don't care about your data, if it's offline, online. I really don't care. You just conform to them, and the framework renders this data. And if we deal with very particular cases, like a page with tracks or a page with something that I didn't think about, then we use composition of protocols. So we have, let's say, item with metadata, or item with icon, or we have a few items that I don't remember right now, but we scale this complexity with protocols. And well, yeah, you conform to this model, you throw it to this framework, and it gets rendered. And I have here a reveal screenshot of how it looks. And something that I was very happy about is that tweaking the collection view layout, by tweaking it, we're able to just render these are several collection views, but we are just rendering the items in the screen, and we can recycle them just as if it was one single collection view. Yeah, pretty neat. And well, now that we're here, well, we have this framework that is available, and that is thin. Cool. But it's still not dumb, because sometimes there was logic like sorting, or logic like translations happening, or any kind of other logic that you can think about. But a team that was using Ceramic, and a team that I think is very strong in the backend, the search team, they were using Ceramic, they were using it a lot, and they realized, like, well, we have these really good frameworks that simplify the view controller, and the model. But the view, and the model. But the view model is still very different between each filter. So they wanted to simplify this, or make it standard across all these filters, and they had a very clever idea. So they sent the view model to the backend, and they created a definition of JSON and some JSON kind of engine that parses and interprets this JSON specification. And they put that on top of the Ceramic framework, which is on top of Glue, which is on top of UIKit. And now, well, now these filters, all these filters start using these hubs. And now we got a client that really doesn't do anything besides receiving data and maybe information of how to render this data. And now it's a pretty dumb client. Well, and you got the consistent, thin, and dumb. But how does it work? And I'm really eager to show you how it works and what we can do about it. So I have a live demo that I hope it works. Okay. So I've got some actual responses from JSON here, from our servers. And I've got an iPhone simulator here. Got it. So imagine that we're gonna start Spotify in Russia, and we're thinking like to create a custom homepage for it. So we will start by maybe doing something simple like, oh, where's my, like maybe showing the latest releases. So as you can, I don't know if you're able to read, but this JSON describes blocks that contain items. So we will start with that. Whoa, we're offline. Probably we need to be online to render this. So I'm gonna try to do that quickly. So this is all happening in the client, but well, for some reason, this debug tool needs to be online. There we go. Live demo. OK. Let's try one more time. If it doesn't work, then we will move on. Yeah, could be. Well, whatever. Unfortunately, maybe you will not be able to see the demo that I had prepared. It was really cool. And well, it was about building the page from the homepage for Russia in Spotify, or Spotify in Russia. Just let me give one more try. Yeah.
Works?
Well, yeah, it works, but my simulator doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
OK.
Try to restart it, maybe?
I don't know. OK, want to try? We always have this demo effect every time that we try to demo something. OK. Right.
Really live demo.
OK. Yeah, we got it. So yeah, you just turn it off and turn it on again, I guess. So we start with something simple, like we're going to show the new releases. And maybe, I guess, it has never happened to you that your software requirements change. And maybe your designer says, like, well, you know, a carousel, we don't like that, so let's move to a grid instead. Or let's move from a table to a grid or whatever. That will generally be a big change of code, or at least some change in the code. But now, by just changing the render type in our JSON response, we got a grid instead of a carousel. And maybe other team that is researching genres, or maybe marketing, or somebody else, they say like, oh, well, it will be cool if for the homepage of Russia we show genres that they consume a lot, like rock or post-punk. And we want navigation items for that. So we can just add them like this. And maybe later, the analytics team says, like, well, we've been researching lots of data, like really lots of data. And we found out that this Russian artist, we see the trends, and we see that this Russian artist is gonna make a comeback. So we want to place him in the homepage. And then we got Yuri Antonov here. And now, let me go back to my presentation. Yep. Cool. So, well, fortunately it worked. So you know what we can do with our client and how fast we can iterate content and we can just test hypotheses. And we can do all of this without going through the App Store, without needing to change any part of our client. This is all just a response from the backend. We have some existing block render types, but if we want something that looks different, that behaves differently, we just implement that part and ship it. There is very low dependency between the models and the views. And this logic can also be shared between platforms. So the Android platform can take the same approach, or even desktop, and just do the same things with their own layout tweaks for each platform. And we got all of this without JavaScript or without like a web view or something. So we got all this flexibility without trading off user experience or user experience that you might lost with a web view. It is a very narrow sweet spot between flexibility and the rigidness of the framework. And what is bad about this? Well, what is this empowering? Well, the coolest thing is that this framework is allowing Spotify, like the next generations of Spotify, which are aiming for very tailored, personalized experiences. And before we had a client that will give the same to everybody. But now we can have a client that is personal and that is different for each one of you. And from the client perspective, this is actually now really simple. Of course, there is lots of machine learning and lots of very complicated things that we need to do in the backend. But at least for the client, well, it's pretty simple. It's just rendering data. And what are the risks of this? Well, the major risk is that you have a single point of failure. So you need good coverage of unit testing, automated tests, whatever you can use to reduce the risk of failing. At the same time, now it's like so much, it's used across the whole application. So any kind of failure, you really notice it like really, really quickly. So that's a good thing. And the second risk, which I think is even more important, is that you end up building your cache, but from the inside. You have to learn to know when your framework is not good enough for the task, and at some point in our iOS application, this framework is not going to be enough for what we want to do, and you have to learn to recognize when will that happen. And the way I'm just finishing here, and I just want to end this with one observation about how these frameworks interact with each other and stack on top of each other. They remind me a lot of how mechanical machines work. So you start with something very simple, like a wheel or a screw or a UI label, and then you combine them, and then you get a more complex machine. And then if you keep combining them, then you get an even more complex machine that gives you more mechanical advantage. And this machine is useful to multiply efforts and move you forward like really, really fast. And this is the kind of things that you want inside a tech organization. And just to wrap it up, my final words on what I've seen like through my story in Spotify, and we develop lots of internal frameworks. And I just want to wrap up with some common pitfalls that we've done or that I've seen on building a good framework. So keep it single purpose. Do one thing, but do it right. If it starts like doing too many things, then you start introducing too many moving parts, and it's going to be just difficult to use. Just keep it simple. have a vision. So have a roadmap of what you want to do with your framework, where it's going to go. Share that toy. That's important. So it's about preserving quality through some ownership and keeping your toy, but also sharing it with other developers and allowing them to contribute and fail. I think that's important. And so that all play together with your shiny toy. And then you need also some kind of marketing and customer support. So it's about giving it a good name. It's about having good documentation, about maybe doing workshops inside your company or evangelization efforts. And this works both for an open source project or an internal framework. And finally, well, these kind of results are the results of lots of people working together towards the same goal. So share that success. This is not just my work, but this is the work of lots of awesome engineers. And we just like stack that effort and build awesome things like this. And yeah, and now that I've said that, thank you very much. And I don't know if we have time, but this is my favorite part. Questions.
Работает.
Yeah.
Thank you for your presentation. My name is Vladimir. I'm from T-Systems. I guess I got your idea about thingness and dumbness of the client. It seems to be very good. I guess I just have one thing that I don't completely understood. So what does the model in your framework do? I mean, I see why you moved a view model to the backend, but why a model is still on front end? It's not clear.
Well, the model will be, I think, both in the backend and in the client, and it's just reduced to these space blocks and items. So it kind of will be in both parts. Yeah.
Maybe another answer will be if you replace your model to the backend, it could create problems with the App Store moderation. Because in this case, all of your code will bring from the server to the client, and it's broke the App Store. Yeah? Other questions? Oh yeah, I see one. While I'm going, Hector, I'd like to be sure, is it production code here?
Yeah. It's this is a framework that is powering Spotify right now.
Thank you very much for great presentation.
Thank you.
My name is Marat. I'm from Seapult. And I think the ideas you described are rather easy to understand, but I can't believe that it was easy to implement them. So what can you tell about the key difficulties, maybe some real experience?
I think the biggest challenge was not technical, but was more about, I always think that the challenges in engineering are not so much technical, but organizational. So technically, I mean, it's just like a vertical collection view. And in the view layout, I just do an intersection of the absolute position of each collection view with the screen. And then I know which ones to render. But then on the organization side, well, I had to reach lots of part in the organization and come with developers like, hey, look, I built this tool. Check it out. And they're like, well, our code already works, so why would we do that? So I think, yeah, like trying to move the organization was more difficult than the technical parts. And I think that happens in all tech companies that
Thank you.
If you just allocate the effort, then it's going to happen.
Hi, I'm Dmitry from Lazada, and I have a question. Basically, in Lazada, we're doing the same concept with the e-commerce application. And the question is how you configure the model view model on the backend side, because JSON is not useful for marketing people, for example, or content people. So do you have some tools to configure the page, set up the JSON on the backend side, and the tools like that for end users, for the back office?
We have some content management systems that the editors use, and they're pretty simple. It's like a WordPress kind of thingy, and then it exports all that into spaces. But well, it needs like kind of massage from the engineering teams to, well, do everything. So in the end, it still needs lots of manual work to join like all those content that comes from data from music editors. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Alexander. Thank you for your presentation.
Thanks.
I would like to ask a question. Is Glue framework open sourced?
No, it's not open source, but I mean, it's something really simple. It's just a very thin layer on top of UIKit, but it's just our metrics, you know, like our green color, our black color, our fonts. So I don't think that will add much value to the open source community. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Hector.
Yeah. So I'm gonna be around. I'm probably gonna be in the party. So if you have more questions, just I'm around here. Thanks.
Awesome.